In the waning days of the Third Age, when the shadow of Mordor had lifted but memories of darkness lingered still in the hearts of men, there came to Minas Tirith a wanderer from the far reaches of Rhûn. His name was Calin, and he bore upon his weathered hands the scars of many battles fought in lands beyond the knowledge of the West. The guards of the White City nearly turned him away, for his garb was strange and his speech carried the accent of the Easterling. Yet, when he spoke of stars that had fallen from the heavens in the desert wastes, King Elessar himself commanded that the stranger be brought before him. "My lord," said Calin, bowing low before the throne, "I bring tidings of great wonder and greater peril. In the burning sands beyond the Sea of Rhûn, where no map marks the way, I have seen stones fall from the very vault of heaven. They burn with inner light, yet freeze the desert sand to glass where they strike." Aragorn leaned forward, his gray eyes intent. "Tell me of these fallen stars, friend. What manner of peril do they bring?" "The men of the East whisper that these stones hold the very essence of creation," Calin replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They say that whosoever masters their power may reshape the world according to his will. But I have seen what they do to those who touch them unprepared. Their minds are consumed by visions of futures that may yet come to pass, and their bodies wither as their souls are drawn into the burning light." The king pondered these words in silence, while in the shadows of the great hall, unbeknownst to all, a figure in gray robes listened with growing interest. When dawn broke over the White City, a great council was convened. Gandalf the White sat at the king's right hand, his staff gleaming in the morning light. Beside him were Faramir, Prince of Ithilien, and Imrahil of Dol Amroth. From Lothlorien came Celeborn, for Galadriel had looked into her mirror and seen shadows gathering once more. "These stones trouble me greatly," spoke Gandalf, his voice heavy with concern. "In all the lore of the Valar, I have found no mention of stars that fall bearing such power. Yet something in this tale stirs memories I cannot quite grasp." Celeborn's ancient eyes grew distant. "In the elder days, before the sun and moon were set in their courses, there were lights in the sky that were not stars as we know them. The Silmarils caught their radiance, but these other lights, they were spoken of in whispers, even among the wise." "What became of them?" asked Aragorn. "It was said they were cast down when Melkor first marred the music of creation. If such things have begun to fall again." Celeborn's words trailed into troubling silence. From his place at the great table, Calin spoke again. "My lords, there is more. The desert tribes speak of a city that appears only when the star stones fall, a city of crystal and shadow that was not there the day before. They call it Valdris Thangorodrim, the hidden fortress of dark fire." At these words, Gandalf's eyes widened and his knuckles whitened as he gripped his staff. "That name, it should not be spoken in any tongue of Middle-earth." "You know of this place?" pressed Faramir. "I know only that such a name was written in the Red Book of Westmarch, in passages that Bilbo crossed out and rewrote many times. He claimed they were merely dreams, but now..." The wizard rose abruptly from his chair. "We must send scouts to these lands beyond Rhûn. If the enemy of old stirs once more, we cannot face such darkness unprepared." Within a sennight, a company was chosen for the perilous journey eastward. Calin would guide them, though his heart was heavy with memories of what he had witnessed in those desolate lands. With him would ride Belegorn, a ranger of the north whose lineage traced back to the Dúnedain of old. Thurin Ironfoot, a dwarf lord from Erebor who carried axes blessed by Dain himself. And Nimrodel, an elf maiden of Lothlorien whose bow had never missed its mark. But it was the fifth member of their company who stirred the most whispers in the halls of Minas Tirith. Morvain was his name, and he claimed to be a scholar of the ancient lore from Dol Guldur, come to offer his knowledge in the service of the king. His pale eyes seemed to hold depths of wisdom, and his words carried the weight of ages. "I have studied the old texts," he said, as they prepared to depart. If these star stones are indeed what I believe them to be, we may need more than sword and bow to prevail against their influence. The sixth member was Goldwyn, a man of Rohan, whose horse Stormcrest was said to be descended from the steeds of the Miaras. Last came Arian, a woman of Gondor skilled in the healing arts, for Aragorn knew that they might have need of her talents in the trials to come. As they rode forth from the gates of Minas Tirith, in the grey hour before dawn, none looked back, for all felt in their hearts that they might not see the White City again. Yet behind them, watching from a high window of the citadel, stood a figure whose face was hidden in shadow and whose purpose was known to none. For many days they rode eastward, crossing the brown lands beyond Dagorlad, where still the bones of ancient battles could be found half buried in the earth. They passed through the remnants of Dale and skirted the edges of Mirkwood, now cleansed and renamed Eren Lasgalen, the Wood of Greenleaf. At the shores of the Sea of Rhûn, they took ship with merchants who plied the eastern waters, trading in spices and silk from lands beyond the knowledge of the West. But as they sailed deeper into those unfamiliar waters, the very air seemed to grow heavy with foreboding. "The stars are wrong here," whispered Nimrodel on their third night upon the water. "They burn with colors I have never seen, and their patterns speak of discord in the music that underlies all things." Indeed, when they looked up at the night sky, they saw among the familiar constellations strange new lights that pulsed with sickly hues of green and purple. Worst of all, these alien stars seemed to move slowly across the heaven, as though drawn by some fell purpose toward the eastern horizon. On the fifth night, as they made camp upon a nameless shore, Cailan pointed toward the inland wastes. "There," he said simply, "beyond those dunes lies the place where the first starstone fell." In the distance, they could see a pale glow rising from the desert sand, and upon the wind came a sound like singing, beautiful and terrible beyond mortal comprehension. They left their ship at dawn, provisioned for the desert crossing with water and supplies traded from the merchant captain. The sand beneath their feet was unlike any they had seen before. Not the golden sand of familiar shores, but gray as ash and sharp as ground glass. As they crested the first great dune, they beheld a sight that filled them with wonder and dread. In a vast crater that had been melted from the very sand itself lay a stone of impossible beauty. It was the size of a boulder, yet it seemed to contain within itself the light of 1,000 stars. Its surface swirled with patterns of color that hurt the eye to follow, and around it, the air itself shimmered like water. "Do not look upon it directly," warned Morvain, pulling a cloth across his eyes. "The starstones show visions of what was, what is, and what may yet come to pass. Mortal minds were not meant to contain such knowledge." But even as he spoke, Belegorn took a step toward the fallen star, his eyes wide with fascination. "I see," he whispered. "I see the forging of the world, the first notes of the great music. I see the wars that are to come, and the shadows that gather even now in the void between the stars." Thurin caught the ranger's arm and pulled him back from the crater's edge. "Steady, lad. Whatever visions it shows you, they're not meant for the likes of us." Yet, even as they retreated from that first star stone, they could feel its influence tugging at their mind, and in the distance, shimmering like a mirage, they glimpsed the towers of a city that had not been there before. The city appeared to be built of crystal and shadow, its spires reaching toward the alien stars like grasping fingers. As they approached across the shifting sands, they could see that it was not entirely real. Sometimes it flickered like a flame, and sometimes portions of it became transparent as glass. "It exists," said Morvain in wonder, "but not wholly in our world. The starstones have torn holes in the very fabric of reality, and through those holes, this place bleeds through from somewhere else." At the city's gates, which were wrought of some black metal that seemed to drink light, they were met by guards whose faces were hidden behind masks of polished stone. These beings spoke no word, but gestured for the company to follow, leading them through streets paved with fragments of shattered stars. In the heart of the city rose a great tower, and within that tower, they found a hall where other travelers had gathered. Men of Harad and Khand sat beside Easterling, and folk from lands so distant that their names were unknown even to Kaelin. All had been drawn by the falling stars, and all bore the same look of haunted wonder in their eyes. At the hall's far end, upon a throne carved from a single massive starstone, sat a figure wrapped in robes of midnight blue. His face was beautiful, beyond the measure of mortal men, yet there was something in his eyes that spoke of depths unplumbed and purposes beyond mortal comprehension. "Welcome, children of the West," he said, and his voice was like music played upon crystal chimes. "I am Thor Luin, the Starkeeper, guardian of the ancient knowledge. You have come seeking answers about the fallen lights of heaven. I shall give you truth, but truth has its price." Thor Luin rose from his throne, and as he did, the very air in the hall seemed to thicken with power. The starstones set into the walls pulsed with inner fire, and visions began to dance in the air before the assembled company. "Long ago," the Starkeeper began, "before the foundations of the world were laid, there existed other realms beyond the circles of this reality. In those realms dwelt beings of such power that they could reshape the very laws that govern existence. They were neither good nor evil as you understand such things, but they were bound by covenants older than time itself. The visions showed vast cities that floated between the stars, populated by beings of living light who played with the forces of creation as a child might play with toys. When the Ainur sang the great music, and Eru gave it being, these ancient powers took notice. They saw in this new reality something that might serve their purposes, a place where the old covenants might be rewritten, where they might break free from the chains that bound them in their distant realm. Now the visions turned darker, showing shadows that moved between the stars, seeking ways to enter the newly formed world. But the Valar were vigilant, and they cast down the first attempts at invasion. The star stones you see falling now are not natural phenomena. They are the seeds of conquest, each one containing a fragment of power from that distant realm. When enough have fallen and been gathered in one place, a gateway will open, and those who wait beyond will step through to claim this world as their own. Goldwyn of Rohan stepped forward, his hand upon his sword hilt. "Then we must destroy these stones before such a thing can come to pass." Thor Luin smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. "Destroy them, child of the Mark. You understand so little. The Starstones cannot be destroyed by any weapon forged in this world, but they can be redirected. Their power can be turned to other purposes." "What manner of purposes?" asked Arianne, though something in Thor Luin's manner made her blood run cold. The Starkeeper gestured, and the hall filled with new visions. They saw armies marching beneath banners that bore no device known to Middle-earth, cities rising from barren ground in a single night, and ships that sailed not upon water but through the very air itself. The Starstone's power could remake this world according to a worthier design. Thor Luin continued, "No more need there be wars between the peoples of Middle-earth, for all would serve a single perfect will. No more would death claim the good before their time, for those deemed worthy would be granted life eternal. No more would darkness trouble the hearts of men, for all shadow would be banished forever." "And who would be the architect of this perfect world?" asked Nimrodel, her keen elf eyes noting how Thor Luin's form seemed to flicker at the edges, as though he were not entirely present. "One who has walked between the worlds and seen the flaws in this reality's design. One who has the wisdom to use the Starstone's power wisely." The Starkeeper's voice grew softer, more persuasive. "You have come far to learn these secrets. Surely you can see the wisdom in what I propose." But it was Morvain who spoke next, and his words rang with unexpected authority. "I see the wisdom in it," he said slowly, "but I also see the lies woven through it like poison through honey." Thor Luin's beautiful features twisted with sudden rage. "You dare name me liar? Child of shadow?" "I dare more than that," Morvain replied, and now his form began to change. The pale scholar's robes fell away like shed skin, revealing armor of silver and gold, and in his hand appeared a sword that blazed with white fire. "I name you kinsman, Thorluin, for you and I both served the same master in ages past before you chose a path of betrayal." The assembled company gasped as they beheld Morvaine's transformation. No longer did he appear as a mortal scholar, but as one of the Maiar, his true form radiant with the light of Valinor. Yet even as they marveled at this revelation, greater shocks awaited. Thorluin's beautiful mask fell away, and in his place stood a being of terrible majesty, his skin like polished obsidian, and his eyes burning with the light of dying stars. "Eönwë the Herald," he hissed, his voice now a sound like the grinding of stone, still playing shepherd to these lesser beings. "I see. I am not Eönwë," Morvaine replied calmly, "though I served beside him in the ancient days. I am Caranthir the Wanderer, and I have hunted you across 3 ages of the world. Thorluin the Corrupted." The truth struck the mortal members of the company like a physical blow. They stood not between 2 scholars debating ancient lore, but between 2 immortal beings whose enmity stretched back to the very foundations of the world. "You were once counted among the wisest of our kind," Caranthir continued, his sword held steady before him. "What price did they offer you to betray your oath to Eru?" Thorluin laughed, and the sound shattered several of the star stones set into the walls. "Price? They offered me truth, brother. They showed me that this world is but one note in a greater symphony, and that note is discord. The beings beyond the circles of the world seek not conquest, but harmony. They would tune this reality to its proper key by enslaving every free will within it." Caranthir replied, "I have seen their harmony in the worlds they have already claimed. It is the silence of the grave. Around them, the crystal city began to shudder and crack, as the conflict between the 2 Maiar sent waves of power rippling through its foundation. The mortal members of the company found themselves pressed to the floor by forces beyond their comprehension. What followed could scarcely be described in words known to mortal tongue. Thorluin called upon the power of the Starstone, and reality itself began to bend and warp around him. The walls of the hall became transparent, revealing glimpses of that distant realm beyond the circles of the world, a place of impossible geometries and beings of living shadow. Caranthir met this assault with the pure light of his own essence, and where the 2 forces clashed, tears opened in the fabric of existence itself. Through these gaps, the mortal company caught sight of horrors that mortal minds were never meant to witness. Yet even as the battle raged above them, the others found their own parts to play. Belegorn, drawing upon the ancient wisdom of his Dunedain heritage, began to chant words in Sindarin that seemed to strengthen the reality around them. Thorin struck the floor with his axe, and each blow rang like a bell, its pure tone helping to hold the world's foundations firm. Nimrodal's arrows shot not at any physical target, but at the tears in reality itself, somehow found their mark and began to seal the gaps between worlds. Goldwyn and Arian stood back to back, their combined will serving as an anchor point around which the others could rally. But it was Kaelin, the simple wanderer from the east, who struck the decisive blow. Drawing from his robes a small starstone he had secretly carried since first witnessing their fall, he cast it not at Thorluin, but into the largest of the reality tiers. The result was catastrophic. The stone, carrying within it a fragment of the invaders' own power, became a poison in their realm. Through the tear came screams of agony from beings that had never known pain, and Thorluin's connection to his distant masters was severed like a cut rope. Stripped of his otherworldly power, Thorluin was revealed as merely another Maia fallen into shadow, mighty still, but no longer a conduit for forces beyond the world's boundary. Caranthir pressed his advantage, driving the corrupted being back with blows of pure light. "You have failed," the true Maia declared. "The gateway cannot be opened now, for your masters flee back to their distant realm to tend their wound." But Thorluin's laughter rang out still, bitter as winter wind. "Think you that this was their only attempt? Even now, starstones fall in a dozen other places. in the Grey Haven, in the ruins of Isengard, beneath the roots of the old forest. You cannot be everywhere at once, brother." With these words, the fallen Maya dissolved into shadow and fled, leaving behind only the echo of his malice. But his warning rang true, for already the company could see new lights falling from the corrupted stars above. "We must move swiftly," said Caranthir, his form now wavering between his disguise as Morvain and his true nature. The Starstones already fallen must be gathered and dealt with before more gateways can be opened. Yet even as he spoke, they could feel the desert around them changing. The Crystal City was fading like a dream at dawn, and the sands beneath their feet were beginning to shift and move of their own accord. "The stones are calling to each other," breathed Nimrodel. "They seek to gather in one place." Indeed, across the wasteland, pinpricks of alien light were moving toward them, drawn by some inexorable force. Each light was a star stone, and each stone carried within it a fragment of the power that sought to unmake their world. As the Starstones converged upon their location, the company faced their gravest choice. They could attempt to scatter the stones across the world, hiding them where they might never be found again. They could try to destroy them, though Thorluin had claimed such a thing was impossible. Or they could gather them all in one place and attempt to send them back through the void to their origin. "If we send them back," warned Caranthir, "we risk opening a gateway large enough for their masters to step through. But if we leave them in this world, others like Thorluin will eventually gather them for the same purpose." It was Kaelin who spoke the thought that was in all their hearts. "There is another way. We could take them out of this world entirely, not back to their realm, but somewhere else. Somewhere they can do no harm to any living thing." "The void," whispered Arian, "the nothingness that lies beyond all creation." Caranthir nodded slowly. "It could be done, but the gateway would have to be opened from within the convergence point, and whoever opens it." He did not need to finish the thought. They all understood that such a task would be a sacrifice beyond hope of return. The Starstones were drawing closer now, their combined radiance turning night to an unholy day. Soon they would merge into a single artifact of unimaginable power, and the choice would be taken from them. One by one, each member of the company stepped forward to volunteer for the final task. But it was Kaelin, the guide who had brought them so far, who claimed the right. "I have seen what these stones do to the lands and peoples of the East," he said simply. "I will not let such suffering spread to other realms." With the Starstones now gathered in a blazing constellation above them, Kaelin began the incantation that Caranthir whispered in his ear. The words were in no tongue of Middle-earth, but seemed to resonate with the very structure of reality itself. A tier opened in the air above them, not a gateway to another realm, but a doorway into the absolute nothingness that existed before creation began. Into that void, Kaelin cast the gathered star stones, and as the last one disappeared into the darkness, he threw himself after them. The gateway sealed with a sound like the world's first breath, and silence fell upon the desert. Of Kaelin and the star stones, nothing remained but memory. In the days that followed, the company made their way back to the lands of the West, bearing word of victory achieved at terrible cost. The alien stars faded from the sky, and the crystal city of Valdris Thangorodrim was never seen again. Yet in the halls of Minas Tirith, when the tale was told complete, King Elisar commanded that it be written in the Red Book beside the account of the Ring War, for he knew that in ages yet to come, when the stars grew strange again, future generations would need to remember the sacrifice of Kaelin the Guide, who chose the darkness between worlds so that Middle-earth might remain in the light. And in the Grey Havens, where the wise still took ship for the undying lands, Gandalf the White smiled as he felt a familiar presence upon the evening wind. For not all who pass into the void are lost forever, and some forms of heroism echo across the boundaries of existence itself. Epilogue: The Echo of Stars. Years later, the Fourth Age. Year 127, in the gardens of Minas Tirith, where the white tree bloomed eternal beneath the stars of Elbereth, an old man sat reading from a book bound in red leather. His hair was silver now, touched by the weight of many years, but his eyes remained keen, as the day he had first beheld the fallen stars in the wastes beyond Rhûn. This was Thurin Ironfoot, last survivor of the Company of the Seven Stars, and the book in his weathered hands contained the tale that few now living remembered in full. "Tell us again, Master Dwarf," came a young voice from the shadows of the garden wall. "Tell us of Caelan and the Starstone." Thurin looked up to see a group of children gathered at the garden's edge, sons and daughters of the city's nobles, their eyes bright with curiosity. Among them stood Prince Eldarion, heir to Gondor's throne, his dark hair catching the moonlight like his father's once had. "Ah, young prince," Thurin rumbled, closing the book gently. "You would hear again of sacrifice and shadow? Very well. But know that some tales grow more terrible with each telling, for time reveals truths that youth cannot fully grasp." He gestured for them to sit upon the grass before him, and as they arranged themselves in a circle, the old dwarf's voice took on the cadence of ancient memory. "It has been nigh on 40 years since we returned from that cursed desert, bearing news that few believed, fewer still understood. Your father, young Eldarion, was but newly crowned then, and the shadow of the War of the Ring still lay heavy upon the hearts of men. To speak of new dangers from beyond the circles of the world seemed like madness to many." The prince leaned forward eagerly. "But you convinced them, didn't you? Father always said that your words carried the weight of truth." Thurin's laugh was like the grinding of stone. "Convinced them? Lad, it was not my words that proved our tale, but the silence that followed. For in the weeks after our return, a strange thing happened throughout Middle-earth. Every scholar of the ancient lore, every keeper of wisdom, every elf lord who had walked beneath the light of the two trees, all of them felt it at the same moment." "Felt what?" whispered a girl with golden hair, her eyes wide. "The void singing," Thurin replied simply. "For you see, children, when Caelan cast himself and the Starstones into that terrible emptiness, he did not simply vanish. He became something new, a guardian standing watch at the very edge of existence, ensuring that what was banished could never return." The old dwarf rose from his seat and walked to where the white tree's branches cast intricate shadows upon the ground. "But that is not where our tale truly ends, for in the years that followed, we learned that Thorluin spoke truth when he said the Starstones had fallen in other places. 3 more were found, one in the ruins of Weathertop, one beneath the roots of the old forest, and one in the deepest halls of Khazad-dûm, where it had turned an entire chamber to crystal." Prince Eldarion stood as well, his hand unconsciously moving to the sword at his side. "What became of those stones? Each required its own sacrifice," Thurin said solemnly. "Belegorn took the stone from Weathertop and carried it north to the ice bay of Forachel, where he cast it through a crack in the world's foundation into the roots of the earth itself. The rangers say that on clear nights, you can still see a pale light glowing beneath the ice where he made his final stand." He paused, his eyes growing distant with memory. "Nimrodel took the stone from the old forest. She bore it back to Lothlorien, where Lord Celeborn and the remaining elves wrought a great working of power. They bound the stone's malice within the heart of a Malern tree, and that tree they set upon a boat and sent down Anduin to the sea. They say it sails still, bearing its dangerous cargo ever westward, never to find rest upon any shore." "And the third stone?" asked the golden-haired girl. Thurin's expression grew grim. "That one fell to my own people to deal with, deep in Khazad-dûm, where the Balrog once held sway. The Starstone had corrupted an entire level of the ancient city. Dain King under the mountain led an expedition into those depths, and what they found there," he shuddered. "The stone had begun to sing, children. Not with voice, but with the very essence of creation itself. It was calling across the void to its distant master, and, if left unchecked, it would have eventually been answered." The prince stepped closer. "How did you stop it?" "With fire and song," Thurin replied. The dwarf lords of old had left hidden safeguards in the deepest foundations of Khazad-dûm, forges that could burn with the very fires of creation, hammers that could shape the fundamental forces of the world. Dayan and his companions used these ancient tools to forge the Star Stone into something new, a seal that would lock away not just the stone's power, but the very memory of how to call upon forces from beyond the world's border. He looked each child in the eye as he continued, but the forging required a life to be given in payment. Dayan himself took up the hammer and struck the blow that completed the seal, and in that moment, he passed beyond the circles of the world, though his body remained standing at the forge for 7 days and 7 nights before finally crumbling to dust. A hush fell over the assembled children as they contemplated this tale of sacrifice. It was Prince Eldarion who finally broke the silence. Master Thurin, you speak of these events as though they were long past, but you were there. You saw these things happen. How do you bear the weight of such memories? The old dwarf smiled, and for a moment, his eyes seemed to hold depths of starlight. Ah, young, that is perhaps the greatest secret of all. For you see, those of us who witnessed the Star Stone's power were changed by the experience. We see further than mortal eyes should see. Remember things that happened before our birth, and sometimes we glimpse what is yet to come. He gestured upward at the night sky, where the familiar constellations wheeled in their eternal dance. Look closely at the stars tonight, children. Do you see anything strange? They all craned their necks upward, searching the heavens. It was the golden-haired girl who gasped first. There, in the constellation of the Crown, there's a new star that wasn't there before. Thurin nodded approvingly. Sharp eyes, young Morwen. Yes, there is indeed a new light in the sky. It appeared 7 nights ago, and it burns with a steady radiance unlike any natural star. Prince Eldarion's voice was tight with concern. Is it another star stone falling? No, my prince, Thurin said gently. This light does not fall. It rises. For you see, Kaelin's sacrifice has borne fruit at last. Standing guard at the threshold of the void, he has learned to turn the enemy's own weapons against them. Each star stone that was cast into darkness has become a beacon of hope, a light that shines across the boundaries of creation to warn other worlds of the danger that lurks in the spaces between. The old dwarf's voice grew stronger, taking on the rhythm of ancient prophecy. The new star you see is Kaelin's own light, magnified by the power of the stones he guards. And if you watch carefully over the nights to come, you will see others join it. Belegorn's star rising from the northern ice, Nimrodal's light gleaming from beyond the western sea, and Dayan's forge fire burning eternal in the deep places of the earth. Young Morwen raised her hand tentatively. But what does it mean, Master Thurin? What are these lights telling us? Thurin's smile was both sad and proud. They tell us that courage echoes across the ages, child. That sacrifice freely given creates ripples that spread beyond the boundaries of time and space. And most importantly, they tell us that we are not alone in the darkness. See, he opened the red book once more and turned to its final pages, where new words had been added in various hands over the years. For you see, the Star Stones were not sent to Middle-earth alone. Across all the worlds that circle under heaven, similar threats have appeared. But now, guided by the lights our heroes have kindled, other champions rise to meet the darkness. In realms whose names we cannot pronounce, heroes we will never meet take up weapons forged in the same spirit as Andril and Glamdring. The children listened in rapt silence as Thurin read from the book's newest entries, accounts that had come from far travelers and seafarers, telling of strange lights seen in distant skies, and rumors of ancient evils stirring in lands beyond the maps of Middle-earth. In the great library of Minas Tirith, the dwarf continued, your father has commanded that these accounts be gathered and preserved, for he knows, as his father knew before him, that the price of peace is eternal vigilance. The enemy beyond the circles of the world is patient beyond mortal understanding, but they are not all-powerful. Each time they reach into our reality, they risk more than they can afford to lose. Prince Eldarion stood straighter, his young face set with determination. When I am king, I will continue this work. The lights our heroes kindled will not be forgotten while any of Isildur's line draw breath. Spoken like a true heir of Numenor, Thurin said approvingly. But remember, young prince, the greatest battles are not always fought with sword and spear. Sometimes the most important victory is simply remembering the truth when others would forget it. As if summoned by his words, a new voice spoke from the shadows beyond the garden wall. Wise words, old friend, though they come from one who has never learned to speak softly. The children gasped as a figure stepped into the moonlight, tall and proud, wearing robes of silver and blue that seemed to hold starlight in their folds. His face was ageless, neither young nor old, and his eyes held depths that spoke of years beyond counting. "Caranthir!" Thurin exclaimed, rising from his seat with more speed than seemed possible for one of his apparent age. "I had wondered when you would return to us." The Maia smiled, and at his expression, the very air seemed to grow lighter. "I have been walking the borders of the world, old friend, ensuring that the barriers Kaelin's sacrifice created remain strong. The work is nearly complete." Prince Eldarion bowed deeply, recognizing the authority that radiated from the immortal being. "My lord, are we truly safe? Have the enemies beyond the stars been defeated?" Caranthir's expression grew serious. "Defeated? No, young prince. Evil of that magnitude is never truly defeated. It can only be contained, redirected, or transformed. But the immediate threat has passed, and the pathways they sought to open have been sealed with bonds that will endure until the end of days." He gestured upward at the new star gleaming in the crown constellation. "Your heroes have accomplished something remarkable. They have not merely saved your world, they have created a network of light that spans all of creation. No longer can the forces of the outer darkness move unseen between the world. Every attempt they make to corrupt reality will be observed, recorded, and ultimately countered." Young Morwen stepped forward bravely, but at such a terrible cost. Kaelin, Belegorn, Nimrodel, King Dain, they all gave their lives. Caranthir knelt to bring himself to the child's eye level, his expression infinitely gentle. "Child, do you think that those who choose to sacrifice themselves for others are truly lost? Look again at the stars they have become. They burn brighter than any natural light, and they will burn forever. Death is not an ending, it is a transformation. And sometimes, when the need is great enough, that transformation creates something more beautiful than what came before." As he spoke, the new star in the crown constellation pulsed once, as if acknowledging his words. The children stared upward in wonder, and several of them began to weep, not from sorrow, but from a joy too great for their young hearts to contain. Thurin wiped moisture from his own eyes and closed the red book with reverent care. "Come then, children. The hour grows late, and your parents will be wondering where you have gone. But remember what you have heard tonight, and when you are grown, tell the tale to your own children." As the young ones filed out of the garden, their voices already beginning to discuss the wonders they had witnessed, Prince Eldarion lingered behind. "Master Caranthir," he said formally, "will you remain in Gondor? My father would count it a great honor to receive you at court." The Maia shook his head gently. "My work here is finished, young prince, but do not think this is farewell. I will return when the need is great, as will others of my kind. The victory your heroes won has created new alliances between the various orders of creation. The Valor themselves have taken notice of what transpired in the desert beyond Rhûn." He placed a hand on the prince's shoulder, and for a moment, Eldarion felt as though he could see through the Maia's eyes, perceiving the vast web of light that now connected all the worlds, each strand glowing with the sacrifice and courage of those who had chosen to stand against the darkness. "Rule wisely when your time comes," Caranthir continued. "Remember that true kingship is not about commanding others, but about serving something greater than yourself. The star-touched stones sought to enslave the will. Let your reign be a testament to the power of choice freely made. With these words, the Maya began to fade, his form becoming translucent in the moonlight. But his voice remained clear as he spoke his final words. Tell your chroniclers to add this to their accounts. The fourth age shall be remembered not as the time when magic departed from the world, but as the age when mortal courage proved stronger than the powers that rule the void. The stars themselves bear witness to this truth. And then he was gone, leaving only the scent of sea salt and starlight on the evening breeze. Thurin and Prince Eldarion stood together in comfortable silence for a long moment, both gazing up at the new constellation of lights that crowned the sky. Finally, the young prince spoke. Master Thurin, do you think we will see them again? Kaelin and the others? The old dwarf's smile was full of mystery and hope. Perhaps not in the way we remember them, lad. But look there. He pointed to where the new stars seemed to pulse in rhythm with each other, as if maintaining some cosmic conversation across the void. They are still with us, still watching, still protecting all the worlds that wheel beneath the light of Eru's creation. As they walked back toward the city together, neither noticed the small figure that stepped from behind the white tree's mighty trunk. It was translucent, barely visible even in the bright moonlight, but unmistakably familiar. A man of the East, weathered by many battles, with eyes that held the wisdom of one who had looked into the heart of absolute darkness and chosen the light. Kaelin smiled as he watched his old companions depart, then turned his gaze upward to where his star brothers waited in their eternal vigil. Soon, he knew, his watch would expand to other worlds, other realities where the same eternal battle between creation and entropy played out in countless variations. But for now, Middle-earth was safe. The children who had heard his tale tonight would grow to be leaders and protectors, carrying forward the legacy of sacrifice and hope that he and his companions had established. And somewhere in the turning of the world, new heroes were already being born, young souls who would face their own moments of choice between darkness and light. The echo of stars sang on, rippling outward through dimensions and across eternities, carrying with it a simple message that no force in creation could ultimately silence. Courage endures, love conquers, hope prevails, and in the deep places of the earth, in the roots of ancient trees, in the ice of the far north and the depths of the western sea, the starstones blazed with transformed power, no longer weapons of conquest, but beacons of defiance that would burn until the end of all things, ensuring that no matter how dark the night became, the dawn would always come again. Thus ended the tale of the seven stars, though its echoes would resonate through all the ages yet to come, inspiring heroes not yet born to stand against the darkness and choose the light, whatever the cost. Here ends the Chronicle of the Star-Touched Stone, as recorded in the Red Book of Westmarch, and witnessed by all who love the light.